Today we have as a guest on the Veri TV channel a friend really that I've got to know us over a period of time out of Zimbabwe, John Bere of Stratus Capital. John has a background of 25 years experience in banking, 10 of which is senior management and in directorship positions. Sat on various boards and various industries, including non-profit organisations. Sits on a board of trustees at, I believe, one of his children's school, which he is very passionate about. Is the founding director and co-owner of Stratus Capital Partners, which we'll come on to shortly, an asset management company based in Zimbabwe, and holds position of the Chief Operations Officer. He's an entrepreneur and has various business interests in the financial services and trade and investment in Zimbabwe and Zambia. He also is a philanthropist. I always struggle actually saying that. I don't know why, but it's one of those tongue twisters that it always kind of gets me. And he's a mentor to a lot of up-and-coming business executives. He's married to his lovely wife and has 2 children, and hopefully we can speak about those a little bit later as well. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Terry.
I'm just going to fire into a few questions, but first one being, what's the one thing most people don't know about you but potentially should?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. Look, I think the most important thing that people should know about me is that I only do things that I firmly believe in. I'm more than just an entrepreneur. I'm actually an innovator, a creator. I like thinking outside the box, and everything I've ever done in my life is really sort of out of the box in terms of thinking, up to and including my current business, which is Stratus Capital Partners. We tackle investments from a completely different angle to most asset managers, and ironically, the environment that we are in here in Zimbabwe not only necessitates that out-of-the-box thinking, but also allows us to explore different options when it comes to investment ideas and businesses.
Who's been the biggest influence in your, private life or even working life, and who has kind of shaped your character as a person?
Okay, I think my biggest influences were my parents, both of them. My dad was quite an achiever. He has many firsts here in Zim. Back in the day, he was probably the first black fellow of the Institute of Secretaries. He was the first black town clerk in Zimbabwe after independence. He drove the Pope when the Pope came to Zim in the mid-70s. He always used to drive us towards education. He was educated in England and Italy, got a bursary straight from high school. He grew up in the rural areas and somehow found himself at the top of the corporate ladder many years later. So he was a very strong influence in my life. My mom, in her own right, was the first entrepreneur I ever got to meet or know. She used to run her own business back in the 80s and 90s, and she basically taught us how to run a business. I started working for my mom in her shops when I was, I think, in grade 5, so I must have been about 10, 11 years old. And she basically gave us the business to run. I mean, I started driving a car at the age of 14 to go and buy groceries and stuff for my parents. And I think from that point in my life, I've always believed in, one, owning your own business, the value of education in whatever you do, and also basically being entrepreneurial in the way we think. So yeah, I think my parents are definitely the biggest influence in my life, and still are.
If you were to, let's say, be able to go back in time and meet yourself, what would be the one piece of advice you would give yourself as to what to do or what not to do?
Okay, first of all, I would definitely advise myself to go out there and venture much earlier than I did. I value all the time I spent in corporate, everything I learned from my former bosses and institutions. Totally value it, but I also think that it took me a while to master the courage to go out there and start and replicate the same for myself. So I'll definitely try and do that earlier. But at the same time, as you know, the life of an entrepreneur is up and down. I'll slow down a little bit once I get started and do things a bit more carefully because I have experienced a few failures along the entrepreneurial journey, but mostly out of not taking time to think things over and do things properly. But I'll start earlier, but with a lot more caution.
That's nice. And we touched on you married, two children, and you actively spend time with them. I always found it difficult, especially in my, let's say, earlier days of work, actually getting a good balance between home life and work. Work, unfortunately, always seemed to kind of win with me, but you have that sorted. You're comfortable where you are with it.
Yeah, I think by design. One of the reasons why I started a business of my own was, in fact, to spend more time with the family. When I was still working in corporate, answerable to other people, I did find myself stuck most of the time away from home or working long hours and early mornings, so I hardly spent time with my kids. But when I broke away by myself, I deliberately made it a point that I would balance that life a bit better. So I've spent a lot of time with my wife and kids before, after, and during work. So to speak, my son is in university in the Netherlands. My daughter is also in university here in Zimbabwe, so they're now university educated. Yeah.
Is there a definitive moment in your career that took you in a specific direction that you could actually pinpoint? Something that I know there's. I always think that a career is a meandering path rather than a straight road. There's always deviations along the way, and where you first set off from doesn't mean it isn't actually necessarily the point or the direction you were setting off to. And there seem to be occurrences or specific things that happen in your career that actually take you in one direction or another. Can you think of one that actually is kind of ended up taking you to where you are now? Or
Yeah, sure. So in the 1990s in Zimbabwe, well, prior to the 1990s, banking was really the preserve of multinational banking institutions. Banks like Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays Bank, Standard Bank, South Africa, which is Stanbic here. Um, there were very few local banks, or what we called indigenous banks at the time. And those few were government owned or government controlled. But in the mid 90s, government decided to liberalize the banking sector and started issuing out banking licenses to local indigenous players. And what that did is it opened up a whole new world for us because we got the opportunity to start our careers in startup businesses that were banks, investment banks mostly. And throughout my career, I've primarily worked for investment banks, with the exception of my first job, which was with HSBC. But that lasted only about a year and a half because they then disinvested from the country. And then I started working for these so-called indigenous banks or locally owned banks. And the beauty of these institutions, which is a gap that I believe is there in Zim that I'm trying to fill now, is that they had the knowledge and experience of the local environment. Zimbabwe is very different to other countries in a lot of ways, and I'm sure you've experienced some of it already. And it takes someone from here who can create a relevant product whether it's banking or any other service that's relevant to the market and the environment that we're in. So these indigenous banks taught us to, like I said, think outside the box, be very innovative, create amazing solutions in terms of financial services. And I've learned a lot from that. And I still pursue the same ethos with Stratus, in that we're here to create an environment that is enabling to any investor or anyone who requires any form of corporate finance or structured trade sort of finance in the country. So I guess I've been molded around that desire or need to create financial solutions for a specific environment that we live in.
And what would you give? What advice would you give to somebody that was setting off, i.e., today into the world of finance or in Zimbabwe? What would you say to them? We spoke about it earlier. You do mentoring. You are involved in supporting young execs. So, as a guide, if again, probably a young you, just about to set off into the world of finance, what would you say day one? Is it, as a good guide?
Yeah, it's true. Particularly, yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's just the fact that you need to look at each situation uniquely and separately from everything else. There's nothing that hasn't got a solution, let me put it that way. As long as it's a genuine problem with a genuine desire for a solution, you can find it. It's about talking to the right people, putting the right structures in place, ring fencing cash flows, you name it. I think that's the space that anyone who wants to go into finance should go into. Short of that, you'll find yourself as a glorified back office clerk doing clerical work that you don't even understand. So my advice to young execs, and I've always said this to, I've been fortunate enough, Veri, to work with a lot of young people, because one of the things we did when I was working for a formal bank was we employed mostly attachees or kids who were there on attachment, who were going to finish university a year after finishing the attachment. So theirs was, we were a learning institution, let me put it that way. And we deliberately taught them how to be different from other people. And I'm glad to say that a lot of them have since actually gone out and are now heading a lot of financial institutions, kids that came through us, and are known for their out-of-box thinking, because that's what we taught them. And I still do that now. At Stratus, we've got about 7 employees, 4 of which are students on attachment. So that's how I would mentor anyone who comes into financial services. It's not as difficult as people think. There's no magic behind financial services. You don't need to know anyone. You just have to think outside the box.
Yeah. Well, it's just don't be a box ticker. Rather think outside of that as well. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up a little bit about we get a bit of background Zimbabwe itself, find out a bit more, especially in the finance sector. Zimbabwe has, I say internationally, it's in the press a lot, and one thing I must say with visiting Zimbabwe several times now, I think there is a lot of opportunity there, and I love the country. I love how robust its people are, how resilient they are to the setbacks that they've had over the years. So I must say that. But just a few questions I've actually got listed here that I would like, you provide a little bit of a background to, or your opinion on it at least. What are the biggest challenges currently facing the finance industry in Zimbabwe?
Okay, I suppose the biggest challenge is the economy itself that we are operating in. It's not at its best in terms of performance. A lot of the economic indicators are very discouraging, be it inflation, um, the value of our currency, unemployment, etc., etc. None of those indicators are very encouraging. However, Zim is a bit of an enigma because, in spite of its dysfunctionality in quotes, it's a very, very functional economy. This, I think, is a case study for anyone who is willing to look at alternative ways of thinking about economics and economies. Because, yes, we may not have the sort of statistics that one would expect a thriving economy to have, but there's a lot of production in Zim. Our GDP levels are very high. We've got abundant resources of minerals and other metals that you can think of. We've got a very hard-working workforce, very educated workforce. The employment figures in Zim, I think, need to be recalculated and recalibrated properly. They say that there's 90% unemployment in Zim. I think there's 90% self-employment in Zim. Okay, so it's a different sort of ball game. If you look at the financial services sector, I think we've held our own quite well. The banking sector is very stable in Zim. We're a very strong and strict regulator who tries to keep people in track. Though I do think sometimes there's a little bit of over-regulation, but that's better than no regulation at all, I think. What I think Zimbabwe really needs is just time to heal and to rebuild. We've been through more than 40 years of turmoil, and change is coming. It started slowly, but it's there. And I think the world needs to give us a chance. You talk about media and media reports, grossly exaggerated at times, if you ask me. But that sort of sentiment needs to be corrected. There's also need for government to have the will to change some of that. I know they've been trying, but perhaps there's a bit more work they can do to try and change things like that. They need to stop meddling with the economic principles of supply and demand. For instance, you can't determine what the exchange rate is by overnight changing what the actual currency is called. I mean, that's not going to change the fundamentals behind the value of the currency, for instance, right? So it's things like that that just need to be tweaked with. But overall, it's not a bad country to be in. I have been fortunate enough to operate in sub-Saharan Africa quite a bit over the years: South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And I still find myself wanting to anchor in Zimbabwe from an opportunity perspective. Spent some time in Zambia, fantastic country as well, a lot more stable in terms of currency and everything else. But I don't think the opportunities we find in Zim are there in Zambia, in terms of the ability to make money from financial services. So yeah, so I think that's what I would say about the Zim economy right now. It's there's plenty of opportunity, there are plenty of gaps there in all sectors of the economy, from service sector all the way to mining and agriculture. I mean, agriculture in Zim is a sleeping giant. I mean, we've got the best climate, probably only next to Kenya or equal to Kenya in Africa in terms of amount of rainfall, sunlight, temperatures, you name it. Okay, We were known to be the breadbasket of Africa because we used to be so much surplus. And nothing has changed. It's the same environment that was there 30, 40 years ago that's there now. I think it's just a question of getting the right investment in the right areas.
Do you think that obviously the current people in power at this moment in time, do you think they're getting it right? Do you think that actually, do you feel is this kind of it's going in the right direction? The very little that I've been over there, and it's been a few times, but again, there seemed to be around every corner positivity in everybody I kind of spoke to. So I don't know if that's something you feel, or if it's kind of, in general, all the people that you speak to, they feel the same way, that things seem to be going in the right direction. Yes, there's been what seems to be, let's say, whether it be a false start with Zig or whether it just not actually working, I don't know. But yeah, there seemed to be this atmosphere of optimism throughout.
I think, Jerry, people tend to forget quite easily. People forget how bad it was before. Okay, and if you just take time to think back to where we've come from, right? And I've experienced it all, from when the currency crashed in 1995, I think it was, to hyperinflation levels like you've never seen around 2000, 2008. We were dealing in sextillions at the time. To where we are today. I experienced food shortages, I experienced riots, I experienced all sorts of nastiness that anyone could possibly experience. And that's just not there anymore. There's a lot of positivity, there's a lot of willpower from government itself to let business be business. Unfortunately, businesses tend to be a little bit deviant at times and maybe work against government, but the willpower from government is definitely there. Infrastructure development in this country is amazing. It's a lot different this year than it was last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. So there's a lot of positivity. Like I said, I think there's a need to be patient. There's a need to embrace the power of latent potential. I think the more we hit at it, the more change that's going to come.
Yeah, again, going back to my last visit, what we did discover in meetings with a number of people, that they were saying that it was kind of that they were talking about a lot of people going overseas to university, to the Western countries, but what they'd noticed, they were coming back. They were coming back because not just to bring the expertise and what they'd learned, but they believed that actually that things were changing, and things were changing for the better. Which, if the educated, the younger generation can see that, and they're doing that, I think it's I think it's a great sign for Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe's future.
Yes, I agree with that sentiment. I take my own son as an example, who left for the Netherlands a few years ago, obviously under the idea that he's going where the greener pastures and where opportunities are greater. He was fortunate enough to spend a gap year in Zim, actually working in the financial services, and he loved it to bits. And now he can't wait to come back home. And every time he comes back on vacation, he comes to the office. He's implemented a fantastic sales dashboard for us here at Stratus, and yeah, I think, and he's just an example of many other kids who've gone out there, experienced the other side of the world, but still want to come back home, because this is where you can fulfill your dreams. Whereas there, you're going to meet all sorts of hurdles that you need to jump over, and it's very difficult for you to get a self start in life there.
I was talking to a gentleman. Well, when we were over again, we had a driver, and his son had picked me up from the airport, and having a conversation with him, got to know him, and briefly in the hour drive, and he was saying that he was at university. He was at a local university. He was in his last year, and he was going to be a quantity surveyor, a QS. But his only concern was that there wasn't the jobs, or the volume of jobs for that specific, obviously, speciality. He wouldn't have the ability to be able to go overseas, or be able to afford to actually do that to find a job, or it would be difficult to do that anyway. But the good thing was, I mean, he felt that actually infrastructure was coming back to Zimbabwe, and long term, he was comfortable with what he was doing. So yeah, again, another sign that the attitude is definitely correct, or going in the right direction as far as the future holds for them.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing about Zim that's quite unique to us as an African country, is that our levels of education still very high in terms of standard. Our qualifications are still largely accepted outside Zimbabwe. I was in Australia about 5, 6 months ago, and I met a lot of fellow countrymen in Australia, both as skilled labor in terms of the mining and construction industry, and also in the medical fraternity. A lot of lab techs from Zim there, some of whom had just recently moved over to Australia, and not like from ages ago. So we're still very marketable in terms of our skills.
Okay. Let me just for this segment, what I want to do is just get find out a little bit more what you're up to at the moment, things that are going on in your current role. So yeah, let's fire away with that. Let's go. What's the most rewarding part of your job today?
Okay, so at the moment, right now, I feel very blessed, and I'm happy with the space I'm in at the moment, because it's been 3 years since I started this particular venture. And you know, when you're starting a business of this nature, you're basically building from scratch, getting your systems and controls in place. You've got regulatory issues you need to fulfill. You're basically reinventing yourself and reintroducing yourself to the sector. I had left the finance sector for a few years to try out things like farming and commodity trading, and stuff that I thought I knew, but quickly realized that I should stick to what I know, which is financial services. But I don't regret those days, because what they did is they gave me an opportunity to sit on the other side of the table in terms of what's required by people in agriculture, in commodity trading, and to come back and provide a solution from a financial services perspective. So we had a good space. We created a commodity fund known as the Stratus Commodity Fund over 2 years. It took us 2 years because in itself it required to be licensed separately as a trust. And that came with a lot of regulatory hurdles we needed to jump over, get approvals. We needed approval of the Ministry of Finance for us to get prescribed asset status, so we could sell the fund to pension funds and financial institutions. We needed approval from the Reserve Bank itself, so that the fund itself could be given liquid asset status, which allows again the banks to invest in it and fulfill the minimum liquid requirements as far as RBZ is concerned. So yeah, it's been a lot of work. This year we're effectively going to market with the fund, and which is why partnering with the Veri platform, for instance, is a major milestone for us because what it does is it gives our platform access to people anywhere in the world. All we have to do now is to point them in the right direction and how to access it. So we're now operating not just in the Zimbabwean environment, but in the global environment, so to speak. So yeah, we're in a good space. The commodity fund itself is the first of its type in Zim. It's really not reinventing the wheel. All we're doing is trading commodities and attracting capital markets to participate in that trade, and thereby creating an enabling environment for farmers to go back and farm every year and know that there's someone waiting there with enough liquidity to trade in and out of the commodities. So market making, as they call it. So yeah, we're quite excited with where we are now, and I think the next couple of years will really tell whether our work is cut out for what it's meant to be, and we look forward to seeing dividends coming through soon.
Yeah, we're very proud to be working with you on the very platform and having your funds available there. Is there more than one fund? I believe there is more than one fund you have available. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got another fund, which is again drawing back from my previous experience. It's a gold-backed ETF. We've set up pretty much all that's required. We're just waiting for a few regulatory approvals for us to be able to list that particular fund on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, so that we can attract international capital into the fund. So for now, we're just waiting for the regulator, specifically Exchange Control from Reserve Bank, to give us the approval to go ahead and officially launch that product into the market. But that delay has allowed us to concentrate on the commodity fund for now.
Okay. Well, for people listening in or watching, what we will do is when this video comes up, we will place the investment information as part of the downloadable links within the video itself. So rest assured that you'll be able to find out all the information you need to know about regarding John's funds. Okay, the part of the initiative that obviously Veri are working on is the connectivity between the African states. How do you see that being is that of benefit to you? How do you see that actually working as a benefit to Africa as a whole, if at all?
I think it's a big benefit to Africa, a big benefit to us as well, because it enables us to collaborate and to share ideas, and to share experiences. I know, for instance, that from my meetings in Zambia, the sort of thing that we've created here in Zimbabwe from a commodity fund perspective is something that they would like to see implemented back there. They were first, for instance, to come up with the idea of a commodity exchange that's known as ZAMEX, that Zimbabwe then used as a blueprint to create ZMX, which is what we work with. And now we're reciprocating by giving them knowledge and background information on how to create commodity funds. So the same can be said of any African country, really. If we are part of a global platform where that sort of information and knowledge can be shared, we stand to benefit from imparting knowledge as much as receiving knowledge from others.
No, that's great. Absolutely. Okay, just to, I suppose, wrap things up over the last segment, and is just kind of what your feelings are, what the future lies as far as maybe work's concerned, the finance industry, maybe Zimbabwe, and we'll hopefully cover them all. Even on your the personal side, I don't know if you've got a timeline at some point where if retirement is actually there in the distant future, or I don't believe I'll ever retire. I think it's just something that I enjoy work to the extent I will always want to work. But again, it's everybody to themselves. So I suppose that so the first question is, what does the future look like as far as John Bere is concerned as a COO with the company? Where would you like to see things move on to or progress to in the non too distant future?
Okay, I think the future is definitely very bright for us, even if I say so myself. I'm very excited about where we are. I'm very excited about what we're working on in terms of opportunities to provide solutions purely out of the commodity fund, for instance. There's so many angles to it that I never thought of before, that are now coming up and that we are using to provide solutions to the markets. I'm excited about Zim in itself. I think we've matured as a nation in terms of our politics. It's no longer, we've come a long way. I think we're headed in the right direction. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. The Zim economy is very, very resilient. If there's one place that will never collapse from an economic perspective, is Zimbabwe. I thought that there was a time that I thought that was time to switch off the lights and just go to bed. And overnight, things changed, and we had a good 5 years of a fantastic economy that was working. Then backtracked a little bit, but I think those days will come back. The new will definitely replace the old. The way, I mean, when I talk to investors, and this is something we discovered recently, in that the new investing public, who are much younger than us, do not have the hangover of previous years' misfortunes. Like, for instance, these kids never experienced the hyperinflation that we experienced. So we're almost pensive when we're presenting our case to them, that they might say, this is going to happen again, but they don't even know anything about it. Okay? Which is a good thing, because, people must move on. We can't all be stuck with what happened in Wall Street crash of 1939, for instance. Okay, none of us don't even know what happened then, but it's something that still lives in the memories of a lot of people, but not the people who matter. The people who matter now are tech savvy. They enjoy access to information, which is why things like the Veri platform are absolutely essential in anything that we do, because they fall in line with today's investing public. And at Stratus, we're happy. I actually feel, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I actually feel that sleep is a waste of time right now. Because I can't wait to wake up the next morning and go to work. Because there's so much work to be done, And I think until that feeling goes away, like you said, retirement is not an option. Though I do threaten my kids that they should work hard and quickly and allow me to retire in Jamaica or something in a few years to come. But the truth of the matter is that, we're in a good space. I'm happy to work. Opportunities are there. We should keep pushing on to find them.
Superb. I suppose on the personal side, what's for family, what do you hope for those? I mean, obviously you have children, they and I suppose, what would they say to you as far as work is concerned? What would they, if your children, or do they talk to you, or do they say, okay, Dad, you need to take it easy, or you need to actually not stress too much, or are they just happy where life is at this moment in time?
Like I said, we've been blessed. I mean, I've got a fantastic wife who's as ambitious as I am. She's a world-renowned psychologist. She's just about to finish her PhD. She gets around the world a lot. She's invited to all sorts of forums to speak about the Zim situation and how she's adopted certain interventions specific for Zim. It's weird because we can draw parallels with each other, and we share these experiences with our kids. And it so happens that my son is into finance like me, and my daughter is also a scientist like her mom. So I think we tend to share a lot with our kids. We encourage each other all the time. We support each other when the chips are down, and so I've been blessed to have that support culture around me.
sounds like you have a very, very close family unit, which is great. Really is. What more could a man want? And I suppose that's okay. So I will leave it at that as the final. Well, we'll leave it at one more question. So, what is your? I think I already know the answer to this, but what is your? Let's say, may have changed over the years, where success in your eyes would have been a certain achievement, but levels of success differ from person to person. But what is success in your mind?
Success in my mind, Terry, is peace of mind, um, happiness. Um, I've lived through success being measured as material possessions, um, and it's not enough. I think success is really about your peace of mind every morning, waking up being happy, being healthy, having good kids, that sort of thing. That for me is success. So if I were to define where I am right now, I think I am largely successful. Um, and obviously, everything else that comes in, like your cars, your houses, money, that's just extras. Those are consequences of what you're doing. But I think the key thing, the secret to life, as the Dalai Lama put it, is love and happiness.
Good answer. Good answer. I would agree with every single word of that. Well done, John. Okay, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up. And listen, John, it's been we've met a few times now, and we keep meeting online. We're talking on a semi-regular basis, and I look forward to continuing that relationship, and looking forward to actually coming out to Zim again and seeing you guys over there. Is there anything? If anything you would like to tell the viewers, or anything that we haven't covered, or if you want to actually plug something, or just say whatever you want to do, the next few minutes are all yours.
Thanks, Terry. Look, I think I've said a lot. All I can add to what I've said already is maybe to re-emphasize the fact that don't give up. Um, don't look at things from some template that someone has handed over to you to follow. Pursue your dreams. And, Zim is a fantastic country to be. You just have to be patient with us. But do come across if you can. And, collaboration, friendships are very important. And we look forward to working with you guys, Derry, and really building something of substance out of this, not just in Zim, but beyond. And we're more than willing to be your ambassadors any way you require us to be.
Thank you, John. And say I think the future looks exceptionally bright, and on a number of levels. Thank you very much, John Bere. Very kind of you to join us today for Veri TV. We'll speak
Thanks,
soon.
Terry.
Thanks, John.
Cheers. Bye.